All right, I got 10:30 on my watch, so I guess we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hear Me, See Me, the 2021 Equity Missouri Higher Education Summit. I'm Tracy Westmoreland. I'm the policy analyst at Dude, and I have the pleasure of being the moderator for today. We have presenters Jonathan Lidgus, Kim Rome, April Regester, Michael Brunkhorst, Magen Rooney-Kron, and Lindsay Athamanah. Before we get started, just some virtual conference etiquette reminders. All participants should stay muted. We want to see your faces, so if you have a camera, please turn it on. Presentations are live, so please deal with or please bear with us with any sort of technical issues. We have a chat that you can add questions into. If you are in the session and you decide you want to join another one, feel free. All sessions will be recorded, so you can check them out after the conference. And don't forget to engage with us on social media using our hashtag Equity2021 at MODude at our new conference website. And now, with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to our presenters.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan Lidgus. I am the director of the UMSL Succeed program and also the president of MIPSA, which is the Midwest Inclusive Postsecondary Alliance. And today's presentation is something that we all like talking about a lot, which is post-secondary education for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So MIPSA is a regional organization that started in Missouri that is the goal is to promote post-secondary education for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, not only in the state, but also around the Midwest. So today we're going to talk about that topic, how it's grown over the last 15 years, and where Missouri as a state is and where it's going through certain grants and initiatives that we have. So Tracy introduced the MIPSA team, who will be presenting with us today, but I briefly wanted to go over kind of the session overview. So I'm going to kind of talk through the history of post-secondary education for individuals with disabilities, and then we're going to talk about TipSits, which is a funding grant that helped start these programs over 15 years ago. We're going to kind of go through the goals of programs like ours at universities, which is really independent living, employment, and growth academically. We're going to dive deep into our Missouri programs, our three Missouri programs, and then talk about where we're going in the future and how this is not just a Missouri focused group, but also a regional focused group. So I'm going to start off by talking briefly about how we began in 2008. Programs like ours, the Succeed program, Bear Power, and Thrive in Missouri, the U.S. Congress passed the Higher Education Opportunity Act in 2008. That really opened the door for programs like ours to start. One, it gave a funding mechanism for our programs. It released what is called Tipsy Grants, which we'll dive deeper into in a little while, which started model demonstration programs across the United States to really focus on individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities attending college. The goal is to really increase independence and then workforce development. The focus of the Higher Education Opportunity Act was really to give access to a population that college has really been out of reach from. And the goal of higher education, whether it is a community college, a four-year research institution, a professional school, is really to grow independently, but also develop skills for long-term career development and better life outcomes. So the unemployment rate for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities is extremely high, and the goal of the Higher Education Opportunity Act is to really kind of level that playing field and help grow programs like ours across the United States. The Higher Education Opportunity Act also opened the door to provide access to federal aid for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities to attend college. So I am going to continue and pass it off to Kim. Kim, you're muted. Just a heads up.
Sorry, thanks. So Jonathan was talking about the federal financial aid for students with intellectual disabilities. And so the United States Department of Education has approved for programs, comprehensive transition programs. So if programs meet that eligibility, students are able to apply for financial aid. Students are able to use that financial aid for courses that can lead to certificates or even for credentialing for a degree later on. It just helps provide that access to inclusive programs where they're gaining that academic, social, and technical education.
So as Jonathan mentioned, part of the HEOA, they appropriated funds towards developing and expanding what are called model transition and post-secondary programs for students with intellectual disabilities, or TipSits. And in 2008, there were approximately 150 of these programs that were accessible to students with intellectual disabilities. Today, there's over 300, which is really exciting. And so key parts of these programs include coursework, living independently, and work. Last year, the majority of students' time was spent in academically inclusive classes. So 60% of the time students were in classes, they were with their peers without disabilities. Although the majority of students do live with their family, there are a large number of students who live on campus and housing. And as John mentioned, preparing for work is an important component of these programs. Last year, almost half of students who attended a TipSit had a paid job or a paid work learning experience.
So as Megan talked about, something that's really near and dear to my heart as being the former director of housing at the University of Missouri St. Louis is living on campus. Students in programs like ours across the United States have the ability to live on campus. And the goal of any student living on campus is really to increase peer interaction, increase social support, and then really connection to the community. For a lot of students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, inclusive housing is not always an achievable goal. And programs like ours really help to show and lead by example that students and adults can live inclusively, inclusively not only with their peers, but also independently in residence halls and apartments across the United States on campuses. What we have seen over the last 10, 15 years in programs like ours is that students in programs like Thrive, Succeed, and Bear Power grow significantly more independent when they learn from their peers in the residence halls and also learn to schedule their own day, learn about budgeting. So thinking through what your independent living looks like as an adult at home, it's managing your day, managing your space, but also getting along with those around you. And that's what college is for and living on campus is for all students who live in the residence hall. So a lot of work has been done in this area, not only in moving from programs that house students in different apartments on campus, but really to truly inclusive living environments like our programs where students live alongside their degree-seeking students, learning from their degree-seeking students, and the degree-seeking students learning from them. And that's really not only an equity issue, but also a diversity issue where everybody is learning to about who they are as an adult and connecting to the community around you. It also helps our students learn conflict management. That's really important for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And then living on campus is really an academic learning community. So we see students achieve better academic goals as they work in tutoring cohorts, but also work one-on-one with peers in their rooms or in study lounges on their homework and other studies. So living on campus really fits that goal of what independent living is and growth is for our students. And one of the goals of MIPSA is to increase programs like ours, not only in the state, but in the region, to have programs like ours have inclusive housing on campus.
As Jonathan stated, students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, their unemployment has been high. And part of the research that we've been looking at shows that students that have been in programs like Succeed, Fair Power, and Thrive tend to do better and have better employment skills. It goes right along with some of the data that I showed here. Part of it were, the students are learning skills and abilities in their classes. They gain support. They're working on internships or job shadows to work in careers and interests that they want to do. We also utilize students' past volunteer and work experience to get an understanding of what their past skills are and work on those. And also they get a variety of different opportunities in many of our programs to have different internships to continue to work on those skills, and also soft skills that employers are really seeing that students need and young adults need. The students have various added support from our staff and their their supervisors to help with any concerns in our programs. But also our programs are starting to work more with agencies that are in their area. Any type of help that we can get from their agencies in their area to help ensure continued transition back home after our programs is also something that we're continuing to work with. And so, these programs, like ours and others around the region, along with the data, just support that our students do better after getting support from our programs on various job skills, and to help them on their career aspirations as they either continue on through college after our programs or go on back home and continue in a job in their local area.
So I'm just going to give you a little bit of history in terms of the development of MIPSA, the Midwest Inclusive Post-Secondary Alliance, which all of us on this presentation are part of, including many other folks in the region. So I believe we have up to maybe 9 to 13 other states that are involved with this alliance. It is centered though in Missouri. It was started out of Missouri. And this just gives you a visual of the background. So we applied for a small kind of seed grant through Think College, which is the National Coordinating Center for programs like ours, in 2017. And that really kicked us off. We met as a large group. We said, what do we need to do? How do we support one another? I think that was the biggest features of what we were looking for is we all do things differently in our programs, and some of us have strengths in certain areas, some of us have challenges in certain areas, and when we work together, we really can identify good supports and services for one another and help to form best practices, not only within the state, but nationally. So we came together, we developed MIPSA, we shared ideas and best practices. We have meetings where we might focus and do a deep dive on certain topics. Some examples of past topics have been residential living, faculty support. We have vocational, and we engage all of our different programs and people who are interested in programs in part of those meetings and processes. And so all the way up to 2018, we had some funding, and then we were kind of left with this question of how can we sustain this work and this continued collaboration. And so I'm going to kind of pause there because in a few more slides, you'll be able to see what we've done since then.
Okay, so this is one of my favorite slides to kind of talk through the programs when we started in 2010, when after the funding was given. There was only 27 programs, and this has grown, as Megan talked about, to over 300, and that might seem like a significant amount of program growth, but that really accounts for a little over 6% of all the colleges and universities in the United States. So we have a long way to go to think through what type of access individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities need in higher education. As you can see from the map, there are 3 programs in Missouri that have developed, and as we kind of progress, in the future, there are more programs going. One of the things you'll see here, and Kim kind of touched on this, is the phrase CTP, or Comprehensive Transition Program. And you'll see that a lot when you talk through programs like ours in the state. All 3 of our programs are approved by the Department of Education to give federal financial aid. That's really what that CTP stands for. It's a level of inclusion in coursework that we have to meet in order to get that designation. But what is really neat about this is as programs increase, it gives students a choice, and that's what college is about, is really finding your best fit. Is the college in an urban setting or a rural setting? How does the college and university fit the needs of the student? And that's really something that is important to growth like these programs really all over the United States. One thing, though, as we talk about equity and inclusion, is getting into programs like ours in the state, across the United States, is like getting into a highly selective Ivy League school. Many of these programs only accept between 13 and 25 students a year, and it can be highly competitive. So the more programs we have in the state and the region, the better that access is for all students and their families moving forward. I'm going to pass it on. We're going to deep dive into our programs in general in the next 10 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Wanted to touch a little bit on Thrive. I'm going to let you read most of the slide and basically just tell you a little bit about what we do as you all are reading through those survey results and what we do. But each year we try to look and see how we could grow. We talk to past graduates to find out areas that maybe we could improve upon and add or consolidate some areas. From what John was saying earlier too, many of our families say that they've seen so much growth socially, on the floor, from independent living, from being more active in groups than what they ever thought possible. We're giving those students that option of doing what they want to do and giving them that independence, which is what many of our students thrive for. Typically in our program, about 1 or 2 students a year are able to take classes for credit towards a degree. So after Thrive, they join either UCM community as a typical student taking classes for credit, or they may go on to a different university. We're also starting our first 3rd-year option next year, so we will be going to a 4-year program in coming years. So we're excited about that. But lastly, we're excited, like John said, about more programs like ours being available. Our first few years, it was hard to have to turn families away because we just didn't have the space available. And now with Succeed and Bear Power and others maybe down the road, we have more opportunities to give students with disabilities a chance to see college and actually see what it's all about. So thanks for listening about Thrive.
So I'm going to touch briefly on Succeed over at UMSL. We actually started our ninth cohort this year, so we're approaching our 10th year soon. We were a TipSits Grant awardee in 2020, and we'll talk more about that and how that kind of helps not only the state of Missouri but the region. We are a 2-year certificate program within the College of Education at UMSL. Our students, after 2 years and 48 credit hours, walk in the graduation of the College of Education. Our students, much like Thrive, have different pathways out of the program. The Tipsy Grant is allowing us to kind of think through what those pathways are, 3-year pathway, 4-year, what type of industry recognized credentials that students would be able to get as they continue their education. We also have the LINK program out of our office, which supports students in their degree program at UMSL. We have about 21 students doing that right now. We enroll 23 to 26 students per year, and the majority of those students live in our inclusive residence halls alongside other degree-seeking students and professional students on campus. We're definitely more of a urban city school, and so we focus a lot on employment, public transportation, independent living, and access to community support and advocacy. We also connect deeply within different agencies in the community and across the state to help support our students, not only in our program, but as they transition out of the program. And then we have a pretty robust parent support program too, because we believe our parents are the experts in their students. So we spend a lot of time helping our parents grow through this transition, because those who have had students, those of you who have students thinking about going to college or in college know that that is just as much of a transition for you as it is anybody else. So we want to support our families that way too. As we continue to grow, we have a lot of College of Ed volunteers, staff, and it's something that as we look through the future, continue to grow in that capacity as well.
Hey, Bear Power. We are one of the newer programs, well, the newest program in Missouri. We started in 2019, and our first cohort of students graduated with the other students that were graduating last May, which was super exciting. They were mentioned several times in graduation, so that was nice. Our students live on campus. We did make some exceptions with that, with COVID, with students whose health were at a greater risk being on campus. So we had a couple of students two Bear Power students that moved into an apartment off campus. They had obtained their driver's license prior to that, so they were commuting to campus. Went really well. They're still living together, which is pretty cool. We keep our cohort small, up to 10 students per cohort, so we can make sure that we are providing that support that they need, individualizing that to students and their level of support. We found early on with our first cohort of students that they at first were auditing courses, but we learned that they were doing the same coursework as other college students, so they were able to transition from auditing to credit. And we're super successful with that, which was exciting. So we have some flexibility with that students can change that status throughout the semester, close to the end of the semester, which is super cool. Our students participate in internships on campus and then in the community. We have our first student that is getting a paid internship, making really good money. He's learning how to navigate public transportation as well, doing really well with that. So he's he's like the first in many areas for that. We have great partnerships with different offices and faculty on campus, which was great. We were a little concerned how that would be being a new program, but everyone has welcomed Bear Power with open arms, and I've heard some great things on how they feel that campus is a better place just with that inclusion on campus. The Arc of the Ozarks, Abilities First, local SB 40 boards have been great partners for us as well. We typically have 2 full-time staff and a part-time internship coordinator. And we're fortunate that we're able to have 2 graduate assistants. We get some grant funding to be able to offer that support, and our graduate assistants provide some of that direct one-on-one support to the Bear Power students, and then also to our ambassadors who are student volunteers on campus. It's considered a student organization, and they just help provide that circle of support for our students. Been opportunities for faculty to do some research on Bear Power. It was awesome with the first cohort. We researched with families, the current students, and then students that were in classes with Bear Power students, and we don't identify them as a Bear Power student in the class, and the majority of the students didn't even realize that they had a Bear Power student in their class, which was pretty phenomenal. We hope to be transitioning to a 4-year program in the fall. That's our hope. Leave it at that.
Hello. Can everybody hear me? I'm having some real audio problems. So I'm sorry. I'm going to go quickly through how the Tipsy Grant is supporting MIPSA and post-secondary education in Missouri. So a Tipsy Grant is the transition programs for intellectual disabilities. Now I can't remember what it stands for. And like Jonathan has stated before, we had gotten it in 2020. And we have it for 5 years. And what we specifically did was write MIPSA into the Tipsy Grant so that they could be a partner with us and work on making post-secondary education a real option for our students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So what MIPSA does and helps with is monthly technical assistance to develop, extend, and sustain the post-secondary education programs in Missouri, the 3 that we have. They support best practices in their post-secondary education programs. We're going to be expanding that and really looking at being able to define best practices and provide them for post-secondary education. They facilitate networking opportunities. So they also have monthly webinars and group activities that people can log into that help with networking across the state. They also support, we also wrote in for MIPSA to have support for the MIPSA board. We have a board and the sustainability of MIPSA. So to continue moving it along and continue it as part of a vital part of Missouri and our post-secondary education programs. And part of the TipSit also had the creation of the Post-Secondary Education Hub, Missouri Hub website. So we are working on that now, and hopefully it will go live soon. And it's called Show Me College. So we hope that will be up and running very soon to help give information about post-secondary education opportunities. So this has led to a grant with Think College, which is a national organization for individuals with intellectual disabilities in the post-secondary education programs, and SEPSIA, which is another regional group to create the post-secondary programs for students with intellectual disabilities, a national technical assistance center. So they'll be working on that. They just earned that, and MIPSA will be a vital part of creating that national technical assistance and dissemination center that will help bring awareness to post-secondary education for our individuals with intellectual disabilities. And then We also, the TipSit also encourages MIPSA, and MIPSA also encourages other post-secondary education programs to include MIPSA and grants for post-secondary education support and continued collaboration. So we're all continuing to really work together across the Midwest in these different post-secondary education programs.
So hopefully we gave everybody a quick overview of what programs like ours across the United States, how they started, the goals, but really how Missouri is a leader in post-secondary education for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and will continue to be a leader in this field in the near future. So we're really excited to be part of this Equity Summit, but also looking forward to any type of feedback and questions that you have with like 3 minutes.
Just in the chat, we already got a question. Are there any community colleges with these programs?
So that's a really good question. So there are community colleges with supports in Missouri for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. However, there are not what would be considered CTP official programs in Missouri besides the 3 of our programs. That's a good question. A lot of, I'll just keep going if we don't have any questions. A lot of programs like ours started in community colleges, which is why a lot of them are 2-year certificate programs. But as you can see, all of our programs are moving to 3 to 4 years because really that's what growth our students need.
We have one more question in the chat. I know there are obviously privacy concerns, but is there a way to get data on students with disabilities?
There's
go
a
ahead, April.
lot. Sorry, didn't. So Think College, basically all of the TipSit programs across the U.S. provide data to Think College as the national coordinating center. So it's all data that has been, stripped of like identifying information and then put into our national database. And Think College really houses a lot of that information. So I highly encourage people to go on to their website. They have lots of reports and research that includes the data from the past 2 TipSit cohorts. And now they're starting to report out all of the information in year 1 of this last group from 2020 to 2025, which includes the Succeed program in Missouri. So that is definitely a great resource for that type of data and information.
Awesome. And I think we have time for just one more question in the chat. Can you talk more about the financial aid available for students, parents interested in this program?
Yeah, absolutely. For programs that apply to be comprehensive transition programs, federal financial aid is given out in Pell Grants, supplemental opportunity grants, and work study. And the students in those programs that receive that funding need to make satisfactory academic progress. So they need to meet all of the academic marks that any student who receives federal financial aid receives. The federal financial aid that is not available to students in programs like ours is federally subsidized student loans, mostly due to the fact that the majority of our programs are 2-year certificate programs. So that's kind of where that's really the only difference there. And then a lot of our programs like Bear Power and Thrive and Succeed have scholarships through their offices or through their offices of financial aid. So when programs like ours first started, there was a huge gap in funding. As we kind of progress, that gap is getting smaller because college is not cheap. So we want to make sure that we give an equitable opportunity for all students.
And Jonathan, I might like to add a little bit is to recommend students talk to their agencies that they're already working with. It helps to know that the agency knows where you're going, what type of program, and there might be other financial dollars out there in the various agencies and programs that they're already in.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'm pretty sure there's more questions, but we are at time. The next session starts at 11:10, so you got about 5 minutes to check out the financial aid panel. Again, emails are right there. Thank you guys so much for presenting.
Thank you, everybody.
And I'm just putting the link to the plenary into the chat if you don't have it already, so you can go to the financial aid panel. Thanks a lot. Bye, everybody.